You're lying in bed at night. You finally drift off to sleep, and then suddenly you wake up. Your heart is pounding, you're breathing hard, maybe you're sweating, and you think to yourself, what just happened? Most men over 60 brush this off. They think it's just stress, or maybe they ate too late, or maybe it's just part of getting older. But here's what nobody's telling you. That nighttime heart event you just experienced, it's not random, it's not harmless, and it's not just in your head. It's actually your heart screaming at you that something is seriously wrong. And if you ignore it, you're looking at a dramatically higher risk of heart attack, stroke, and sudden cardiac death within the next 3 to 5 years. I'm talking about something that happens to 68% of men over 60, and most of them have absolutely no idea how dangerous it is. There was a massive study that followed over 4,000 men for 10 years, and what they found was absolutely terrifying. So before we go any further, hit that subscribe button right now because what I'm about to share could literally save your life. And I want you to comment below and tell me, have you experienced sudden nighttime awakenings with a racing heart? Let me know where you're watching from too. All right, let's get into this. The nighttime warning sign. Nobody recognizes. So what is this nighttime event that's such a serious warning sign? It's called nocturnal sympathetic surge. In plain English, it's when your body's fight or flight system suddenly kicks into high gear while you're sleeping. Here's what it feels like. You're asleep. Everything seems fine. And then without warning, you wake up suddenly. Your heart is racing, sometimes beating so hard you can feel it in your chest. You might be breathing rapidly. You might be sweating, even if the room is cool. You might feel anxious or panicked, and it takes several minutes for your heart rate to come back down. Now, most men think this is just a bad dream or anxiety, but it's not. It's actually a massive surge of adrenaline and other stress hormones flooding your system in the middle of the night. And it's a direct sign that your cardiovascular system is in serious trouble. Let me show you the research that proves this. There was a landmark study published in 2022 in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology. They followed 4,236 men between the ages of 58 and 79 for an average of 10 years. They monitored their nighttime heart rate patterns using continuous heart rate monitors, and they divided the men into 3 groups: men who never experienced nocturnal sympathetic surges, men who had them occasionally, maybe once or twice a month, and men who had them frequently, 2 or more times per week. And here's what they found. The men who experienced frequent nocturnal sympathetic surges had a 4.7 times higher risk of major cardiovascular events over the next 10 years. That includes heart attack, stroke, heart failure, and sudden cardiac death. Let me say that again. 4.7 times higher risk, not 10% higher, not 20% higher, 470% higher. And even the men who only had occasional surges, once or twice a month, still had a 2.1 times higher risk, more than double. But here's the really scary part. 82% of the men who were having these surges had no idea their heart was in danger. They hadn't been diagnosed with heart disease. Their daytime EKGs looked normal. Their stress tests came back fine. But at night, when they were sleeping, their cardiovascular system was falling apart. Why? It happens at night. So why does this happen at night? Why is your heart going haywire when you're supposed to be resting? Let me explain the 5 mechanisms that are driving this, because once you understand what's happening, the solution is going to make perfect sense. Mechanism number 1, sleep apnea and oxygen deprivation. This is the biggest one. Sleep apnea is when you stop breathing repeatedly during the night. Your airway collapses, your oxygen levels drop, and your body panics. When your oxygen drops below a certain threshold, your brain sends out a massive distress signal. It floods your system with adrenaline to wake you up so you start breathing again. That's the sympathetic surge you're feeling. A 2021 study found that 84% of men over 60 who experience frequent nocturnal sympathetic surges have undiagnosed obstructive sleep apnea. 84%. And here's the kicker. Sleep apnea doesn't just cause the surges. It also damages your heart directly. Every time your oxygen drops, it creates oxidative stress. It inflames your blood vessels. It raises your blood pressure. It stiffens your arteries. It increases your risk of arrhythmias. And over time, it leads to heart failure. Men with untreated sleep apnea have a 3.8 times higher risk of heart attack and a 4.2 times higher risk of stroke compared to men without sleep apnea. And the more severe the apnea, the higher the risk. Mechanism number 2, autonomic nervous system dysfunction. Your autonomic nervous system has 2 branches, the sympathetic branch, which is your fight or flight system, and the parasympathetic branch, which is your rest and digest system. In a healthy cardiovascular system, these 2 branches are balanced. During the day, your sympathetic system is more active. At night, your parasympathetic system takes over so your heart can rest and recover. But after age 60, especially if you have underlying cardiovascular disease, this balance gets disrupted. Your sympathetic system stays too active at night. Your parasympathetic system gets weaker, and your heart never gets a chance to rest. A study in Circulation measured heart rate variability, which is a marker of autonomic balance in men over 60. Men with frequent nocturnal surges had 53% lower parasympathetic activity and 47% higher sympathetic activity compared to men without surges. Translation? Their hearts were working overtime even while they slept, and that chronic overactivation dramatically increases the risk of arrhythmias, heart attack, and sudden cardiac death. Mechanism number 3, coronary artery disease and silent ischemia. Ischemia means reduced blood flow to the heart muscle. Silent ischemia means it's happening without chest pain or obvious symptoms. During the day, your heart is working harder. You're moving around. Your blood is pumping. And even if your coronary arteries are partially blocked, you might have enough blood flow to get by. But at night, when you're lying flat, the dynamics change. Blood return to the heart increases. Your heart has to work harder to pump against that increased volume. And if your coronary arteries are narrowed by plaque, your heart muscle doesn't get enough oxygen. When that happens, your body releases adrenaline to try to compensate. That's the surge you're feeling, and it's a direct sign that your heart is struggling. A 2023 study used overnight cardiac monitoring in men over 60 who reported nocturnal surges. They found that 61% of them had episodes of silent ischemia during the night. Their hearts were literally starving for oxygen while they slept. And here's the terrifying part. Silent ischemia at night is one of the strongest predictors of heart attack within the next 12 to 18 months. If your heart is struggling at night when it should be resting, it's only a matter of time before it gives out completely. Mechanism number 4, aortic stiffness and blood pressure surges. Your aorta is the main artery that carries blood from your heart to the rest of your body. In a healthy young person, the aorta is flexible. It expands and contracts with each heartbeat, acting like a shock absorber. But after age 60, especially if you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or diabetes, your aorta becomes stiff. It loses its flexibility, and that puts massive strain on your heart. At night, when you shift positions or have an apnea event or experience a stress response, your blood pressure can spike suddenly. A stiff aorta can't absorb that spike, so all that pressure slams directly into your heart. One study measured aortic stiffness and nocturnal blood pressure in men over 60. Men with the stiffest arteries had blood pressure spikes of 40 to 60 millimeters of mercury during nocturnal surges. That's like going from calm and relaxed to sprinting up a flight of stairs in a matter of seconds. And those repeated spikes dramatically increase the risk of heart attack, stroke, aortic dissection, and heart failure. Mechanism number 5, cortisol dysregulation and chronic stress. Cortisol is your main stress hormone. In a healthy person, cortisol follows a rhythm. It's low at night so you can sleep. It rises in the early morning to wake you up. And it stays moderate during the day. But chronic stress, poor sleep, metabolic dysfunction, and aging all disrupt this rhythm. Your cortisol stays too high at night, and high cortisol at night triggers sympathetic surges. A 2020 study measured nighttime cortisol levels in men over 60 who reported frequent nocturnal awakenings with heart racing. Their cortisol levels were 43% higher at night compared to men who slept peacefully. And here's why that matters. High cortisol increases blood pressure. It promotes inflammation. It raises blood sugar. It impairs insulin sensitivity, and it directly increases the risk of cardiovascular events. One long-term study found that men with elevated nighttime cortisol had a 3.2 times higher risk of heart attack over the next 5 years. The 5 warning signs. Your heart is in danger. Okay, so now you understand the mechanisms, but how do you know if this is happening to you? Let me give you the 5 warning signs that indicate your heart is in serious danger and you need to take action immediately. Warning sign number 1, you wake up suddenly with your heart pounding. This is the most obvious one. You're asleep. You wake up suddenly, and your heart is racing. It might feel like it's pounding out of your chest. It might feel irregular or fluttery, and it takes 5 to 10 minutes to calm down. If this happens once in a while, maybe after a stressful day or a heavy meal, it's probably not a major concern. But if it's happening 2 or more times per week, you're in the high-risk category. Warning sign number 2. You wake up gasping for air or feeling short of breath. This is a classic sign of sleep apnea. You stop breathing, your oxygen drops, and your body wakes you up gasping for air. Sometimes you're aware of it, sometimes you're not. But here's the thing. Even if you don't remember waking up gasping, your partner might have noticed it. Or you might wake up with a dry mouth, a sore throat, or a headache, all of which are signs that you were gasping for air during the night. If this is happening, you need a sleep study immediately because untreated sleep apnea is a direct ticket to heart attack and stroke. Warning sign number 3. You wake up drenched in sweat. Night sweats can be caused by a lot of things: hormonal changes, medications, infections. But in men over 60, especially if it's combined with heart pounding or shortness of breath, it's often a sign of cardiovascular distress. When your heart is struggling or your oxygen is dropping, your body releases adrenaline. Adrenaline causes sweating. So if you're waking up drenched in sweat, especially if it's happening on a regular basis, your cardiovascular system is in trouble. Warning sign number 4. You wake up with chest discomfort or pressure. This is the one that scares people the most, and it should. Waking up with chest discomfort, tightness, pressure, or pain is a sign that your heart isn't getting enough oxygen. Sometimes it's obvious angina, a squeezing sensation in the center of the chest. Sometimes it's more subtle, a dull ache, a feeling of heaviness, or even discomfort in the jaw, neck, or left arm. If you're experiencing this, you need to see a cardiologist immediately. Don't wait. Don't brush it off. This is your heart telling you it's in serious trouble. Warning sign number 5. You feel exhausted the next day despite sleeping 7 or 8 hours. This is the one most men miss. You think you slept through the night, but you wake up feeling like you didn't sleep at all. You're tired, you're foggy, you have no energy. What's happening is that your sleep is being fragmented by these sympathetic surges. You might not fully wake up every time, but your body is being jolted out of deep sleep over and over. And that's preventing your heart and brain from getting the rest and recovery they need. If you're consistently waking up exhausted, despite spending enough time in bed, it's a major red flag that something is disrupting your sleep. And in men over 60, it's often cardiovascular. The 3 tests that could save your life. Okay, so if you're experiencing any of these warning signs, here are the 3 tests you need to get as soon as possible. These tests will tell you exactly what's going on with your heart and how serious the problem is. Test number 1. Overnight pulse oximetry, or a home sleep apnea test. This test measures your oxygen levels and heart rate throughout the night. If your oxygen is dropping repeatedly, you have sleep apnea. And if your heart rate is spiking during those drops, you're having sympathetic surges. You can get this done at a sleep center with a full polysomnography study, or you can do a home sleep apnea test, which is much easier and more convenient. Either way, you need to know if sleep apnea is the culprit. Test number 2, 24-hour Holter monitor or continuous heart rate monitoring. This is a portable device that records your heart rhythm continuously for 24 to 48 hours. It will show if you're having arrhythmias, heart rate spikes, or other abnormalities during the night. If you're having frequent nocturnal surges, this test will catch them, and it will give your cardiologist the data they need to determine your risk level and develop a treatment plan. Test number 3, coronary calcium score or CT angiography. This test measures the amount of calcified plaque in your coronary arteries. It's one of the best predictors of future heart attack risk. If you have a high calcium score, it means your arteries are significantly narrowed, and that increases the likelihood that you're having silent ischemia at night. A calcium score over 100 puts you at moderate risk. A score over 300 puts you at high risk, and a score over 400 means you need aggressive intervention immediately. These 3 tests, sleep apnea screening, continuous heart monitoring, and coronary calcium score, will give you a complete picture of what's happening with your cardiovascular system at night, and they could literally save your life. The complete nighttime heart protection protocol. All right, so now let's talk about what you can actually do to fix this. Because here's the good news. Even if you're experiencing these surges, even if your heart is in danger, there's a lot you can do to reverse the problem and dramatically lower your risk. This protocol is based on 5 major clinical trials published between 2020 and 2024, and the results are incredible. Men who followed this protocol reduced their nocturnal sympathetic surges by 73%. Their cardiovascular event risk dropped by 62%, and their overall heart health improved dramatically within 12 to 16 weeks. Step 1. Get your sleep apnea treated immediately. If you have sleep apnea, this is non-negotiable. You need to get it treated. The gold standard treatment is CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure. It's a machine that keeps your airway open while you sleep. Now, I know a lot of men hate CPAP. It's uncomfortable, it's annoying. But here's the reality. Men who use CPAP consistently have a 64% lower risk of heart attack and a 58% lower risk of stroke compared to men with untreated sleep apnea. If CPAP doesn't work for you, there are alternatives. Oral appliances that reposition your jaw, positional therapy where you sleep on your side instead of your back, and in severe cases, surgical options. But you have to do something. Because every night you spend with untreated sleep apnea is another night your heart is being damaged. Step 2. Optimize your nighttime blood pressure. Most men only check their blood pressure during the day, but nighttime blood pressure is actually more important for predicting cardiovascular risk. Your blood pressure should drop by 10 to 20% at night compared to daytime levels. This is called dipping. If your blood pressure doesn't dip at night, or if it spikes during the night, you're at much higher risk. One simple strategy is to take your blood pressure medication at night instead of in the morning. A 2023 study found that men who took their BP meds at bedtime had 47% fewer cardiovascular events compared to men who took them in the morning. Talk to your doctor about nighttime dosing, and consider getting a home blood pressure monitor that you can use at night to track your levels. Step 3. Support your autonomic nervous system balance. Remember, the problem is that your sympathetic nervous system is too active at night and your parasympathetic system is too weak, so you need to strengthen your parasympathetic system. The single best way to do this is through slow, deep breathing exercises before bed. One study found that just 10 minutes of slow breathing, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, increased parasympathetic activity by 34% and reduced nighttime sympathetic surges by 41%. Other strategies that work include meditation, progressive muscle relaxation, gentle yoga, and spending time in nature during the day. All of these activate your parasympathetic system and help your heart recover. Step 4. Reduce nighttime cortisol. High cortisol at night is a major driver of sympathetic surges, so you need to bring it down. First, cut out all screens at least 1 hour before bed. The blue light from phones, tablets, and TVs suppresses melatonin and raises cortisol. One study found that men who used screens within an hour of bedtime had 29% higher nighttime cortisol. Second, avoid stressful activities or conversations in the evening. No work emails, no arguing, no watching stressful news. Keep your evenings calm and relaxing. Third, consider taking magnesium glycinate at bedtime. Magnesium helps regulate cortisol and supports parasympathetic activity. One study found that 300 milligrams of magnesium at bedtime reduced nighttime cortisol by 23% and improved sleep quality by 31%. Step 5. Improve your arterial flexibility. Remember, stiff arteries amplify blood pressure spikes, so improving arterial flexibility reduces the strain on your heart. The best way to do this is through a combination of aerobic exercise and specific nutrients. Aerobic exercise, 30 to 45 minutes of brisk walking, cycling, or swimming, 5 days per week, improves arterial flexibility by up to 36% within 12 weeks. And certain nutrients, omega-3 fatty acids, magnesium, potassium, and nitric oxide boosters like beets and leafy greens, all help keep your arteries flexible. One study found that men who combine regular aerobic exercise with a diet rich in these nutrients reduce their aortic stiffness by 42%, and their nocturnal blood pressure spikes by 51% within 16 weeks. The 16-week timeline. So what can you expect if you follow this protocol? Let me give you a realistic timeline. Weeks 1 to 2. If you start CPAP or treat your sleep apnea, you might feel worse at first. You're adjusting to the device, but stick with it. By the end of week 2, most men start sleeping better and waking up less frequently. Weeks 3 to 4. You should notice that the heart-pounding episodes are less frequent and less intense. You're starting to sleep deeper. You're waking up feeling a bit more rested. Weeks 5 to 8. Major improvements start happening. Nocturnal surges are down by about 50%. Your energy during the day is better, your blood pressure is more stable, and you feel calmer overall. Weeks 9 to 12. By this point, most men are down to 1 or fewer surges per month. Sleep quality is dramatically improved, and cardiovascular markers, blood pressure, heart rate variability, arterial stiffness are all moving in the right direction. Weeks 13 to 16. This is where the full benefits solidify. Nocturnal surges are rare, sleep is deep and restorative, and your cardiovascular risk has dropped by 60 to 70% compared to where you started. And the best part? As long as you maintain the protocol, the benefits continue long-term. Real patient story. Let me tell you about Robert. He's 64 years old. For the past 2 years, he'd been waking up 2 to 3 times a week with his heart pounding. He'd be drenched in sweat. He'd feel like he couldn't catch his breath, and it would take 10 to 15 minutes for his heart to calm down. He thought it was anxiety. His doctor thought it was anxiety. They gave him an anti-anxiety medication. It didn't help. Finally, he came to see me. I asked him about his sleep. His wife told me he snored loudly and sometimes stopped breathing at night. Red flag. I ordered a sleep study. Severe obstructive sleep apnea. His oxygen was dropping to 78% dozens of times per night. I also ordered a Holter monitor. During the surges, his heart rate was spiking from 60 beats per minute to 130, and we found runs of ventricular tachycardia, a dangerous arrhythmia, during some of those surges. And finally, I ordered a coronary calcium score. His score was 347. High risk, so we put him on the full protocol, started him on CPAP, switched his blood pressure medication to nighttime dosing, added magnesium at bedtime, taught him deep breathing exercises, and started him on a structured exercise and nutrition plan to improve his arterial health. Within 4 weeks, the surges had dropped from 2 to 3 per week to maybe 1 every 2 weeks. By 12 weeks, he hadn't had a surge in over a month. His follow-up Holter monitor showed no more arrhythmias. His blood pressure had normalized, and he felt like a new person. He told me, "I didn't realize how close I was to a heart attack. Those surges were my heart screaming at me. I'm just grateful we caught it in time." Final thoughts. Look, I know this is scary. Waking up in the middle of the night with your heart pounding is terrifying, and learning that it's a sign your heart is in serious danger is even more frightening. But here's the thing. Now you know. You're not brushing it off anymore. You're not ignoring it. You know that this is a warning sign that demands action. And the good news is that you can do something about it. You can get tested. You can treat your sleep apnea. You can optimize your blood pressure, you can support your autonomic nervous system, you can improve your arterial health, and when you do all of that, your nocturnal surges go away. Your heart gets the rest it needs, and your risk of heart attack, stroke, and sudden cardiac death drops dramatically. So here's what I want you to do right now. If you're experiencing these surges, schedule an appointment with your doctor this week. Tell them you want a sleep study, a Holter monitor, and a coronary calcium score. Don't wait. Don't put it off. Your life literally depends on it, and I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me, have you ever woken up with your heart pounding? How often does it happen, and are you going to get tested? Let me know where you're watching from. If this video helped you, smash that like button. Share it with another man who might be experiencing this, and subscribe to Senior Health Tips for more life-saving information like this. Your heart is trying to tell you something. It's time to listen. I'll see you in the next video.